Hi, and welcome back to Hot Girl Pilates. It has been over 2 years since I last uploaded an episode, and so much has happened. I'm ready to just yap and fill you in on everything. I have some notes. I asked on Instagram yesterday if there was any topics you'd like me to cover specifically and some things that I just really want to yap about. So I'm going to go over all those things. And I also just want to say, if you're someone who has been here since the first episode of Hot Girl Pilates, I can't thank you enough. I'm still here for you and I just appreciate you. And I hope that this episode gives some context and helps you to understand too that it's okay for your own life and your own workflow and your own creativity to ebb and flow as well. I want to start with why we decided to move from Los Angeles to New York. This is kind of where it all started, so I think this is a helpful place to jump back in here. The last 2 years, I did have some personal issues and some business issues that one of them that I can't talk about at all, which is kind of frustrating. But the other one I can, even though I'm a little nervous to bring it up, but at the same time, maybe it will help someone else out there. So in late 2024, I had a person consistently harassing me through many avenues, just essentially stalking me and making my life feel really scary. I think the scariest part, besides just the constant barrage of harassment, was that this person, this man, had my home address. So that really shook my world. It changed the way that I show up online, I think, forever. And while there's something kind of sad about letting go of how I used to show up online, I think it's actually normal and natural to evolve and to understand what parts of your life need to stay private for your own safety. And thankfully, this person, the situation is completely resolved. The Los Angeles District Attorney did press charges and he pled guilty. So I haven't had an issue in a number of months from this person. So I'm feeling very good and positive about that. But that was probably the first thing that made me feel like I wasn't necessarily attached to Los Angeles and where we were living in the way that maybe I had imagined I was. Kyle and I got married in September of 2024. And of course, planning a wedding alongside running a business definitely made it harder to show up for things I do like this, my podcast and Instagram. I was certainly not showing up as much as I maybe had been in the past. And something happened on my honeymoon that was a catalyst for pretty much everything. And it seems strange, but it was acne. Okay. So leading up to my wedding, my skin was just going through it. And I was pushing through. I didn't feel super bad about it. I did, want to really understand how to do my makeup in a way that would allow me to still feel confident on my wedding day. So I practiced that a lot. I felt really good. I felt confident. And then this might sound pathetic, but it's okay. We were on our honeymoon. I was in the Maldives, of all places. The most stunning, perfect place. Our wedding was incredible. It went off so much smoother than I had imagined. It was amazing. So I'm in the Maldives and I post a couple of reels from my wedding. And why did I look through my messages? I should have known better. I had a message from someone on Facebook who said, "Your skin looks like shit." And you know what? I have had a lot of mean comments, but that one it really stung because I felt like I had done a good job of, using makeup to make myself look better and to make my skin issues not seem as bad. But man, that comment, that hurt, that stung. So when we got home, I decided to go on Accutane. This was a medication I had been avoiding for many years for, reasons I think many people are scared to take it. It's extremely strong and there's a lot of rules and restrictions when you're on a medication like that. But I had reached my limit. So I started taking Accutane, and one of the restrictions is you need to be on 2 forms of birth control, or you need to be completely abstinent from sex while you are on the medication because it has such detrimental impacts on a fetus and pregnancy. So because I had not been on hormonal birth control for 10 plus years, I was feeling just like there was no way I was going to go back on a hormonal birth control. And I decided to abstain. So that was our method of birth control that my dermatologist allowed me to do. And I finished my round of Accutane sometime around when I went to Coachella with my friend Kat. So I remember that was kind of the end of the journey. I felt so good. My skin, was clear. It worked. And there's a very strict rule about how long you need to wait after completing Accutane for the active ingredient to leave your system before you can, start having unprotected sex again or even sex with just one form of birth control. So when I was waiting for that, me and Kyle, the countdown was on, right? I can't believe I'm sharing this online, but the first time that we had sex after clearing the Accutane from my system, I got pregnant. And it was a little nerve-wracking just because of how scary that medication is on a pregnancy. But I was literally like 1 day over the recommended amount of time to wait. So that was probably the scariest part of my early pregnancy, was worrying that, even though we had waited the appropriate amount of time, that perhaps it still was in my system. So that was a little bit scary, but we got through it, and, my baby was perfectly healthy. So that was really encouraging. How did this lead me to moving to New York? So Kyle has been a little bit lost in Los Angeles for the past couple years because he was running a business that was based in LA and he closed his business. So he started to feel a little lost why he was still in the city. I also was running my business in Los Angeles, but I didn't need to. I could run it anywhere. I had this attachment to Los Angeles that had more to do with knowing that all the best things in my life happened while I was living in Los Angeles. I met Kyle, I started my business, I made some lifelong friends. At the same time, there was some heavy stuff that had happened in LA for me. So I think I pushed a lot of that to the back of my mind, and I saw moving back to the East Coast as moving back to a lot of the darkness that I was running away from when I moved to LA in the first place. So Kyle and I were a little bit at odds on where we wanted to live. But we turned that pregnancy test over, saw it was positive. I cried. I was so scared. And I fell to the floor. Kyle's on the floor with me. And one of the first things he says after all the shock of it settles and we're looking at each other, we're holding each other, and he just says, "We have to move back east." Something about his confidence and his determination, the way he said that, I felt a little bit differently about it for the first time. And I thought maybe it was something that we could do. Maybe it was something that was the right choice. And when I look back, I can see that I wasn't necessarily in the best mental place in the last couple of years in Los Angeles. as maybe I had thought I was. I was pushing back against moving to New York so much. And I basically told everyone, like, it's just Kyle, it's not me, I don't want to move. But looking back in hindsight, I can see that I actually needed a new space. And I think having a baby and realizing that we didn't have the village that, we were hoping to have in Los Angeles made it a lot easier to swallow moving, even though the thought of moving was just completely overwhelming. And we couldn't really decide officially to move until Kyle got permission from his job to work remotely from New York and stay on West Coast hours. We were waiting on that, y'all, for months. It wasn't until I was 33 weeks pregnant that we got confirmation we could move. So I feel like we moved when I was like 34 weeks pregnant. Dog, cat, Kyle, me, super pregnant, on the plane, moving with all our things, packing up a trailer, moving into a house we had never visited that we just felt was right from online. And luckily my mother-in-law was able to do a walkthrough of the house for us, and that made us feel a lot better about moving here. But we moved in February and experienced the coldest, most bitter winter storms I had ever experienced, even though I grew up on the East Coast. So that was kind of wild, a wild welcome. But I think almost right away, coming to our new place, I realized this was the right decision. I felt really good about it. I feel like having a home and a yard, it just changed the way that I felt and really improved my mental state. So that was very much needed leading into giving birth. So that's how we ended up in New York, the very long story of it. And yeah, so that's how we ended up here. I wanted to cover my birth story and just share kind of how my birth went for anyone who's curious. And I also want to just acknowledge how triggering, emotional this could feel for many different people out there who have experienced loss, who have experienced a more complicated delivery, who are trying to get pregnant. And I just want to acknowledge that and know that I'm speaking about this from a place of such privilege, and that's something I'm aware of. So I just want to give that caveat before I talk about the birth story. My entire pregnancy was uncomplicated and smooth. I felt great during my pregnancy, which in some ways made me nervous because I had heard that if you had an easy pregnancy, you might have a hard time with postpartum depression. I also was very much aware that my mom had had postpartum depression with every single delivery, every single birth. And there's a genetic component to it. This is actually my life hack. But I went into giving birth and becoming a mom with extremely low expectations. People would ask me, are you excited? I bet you're so excited. I bet you can't wait. And I just couldn't relate to that. I was in a place of just neutrality. That's what I would say. I didn't feel bad about it, but I wasn't jumping up and down excited. I was just feeling very neutral. Of course, nervous about how the delivery was going to go as well. What kept me sane? Moving, staying moving, keeping up with walks, lifting weights. I filmed the Muscle Mommy program during my second and end of my third trimester, or beginning of my third trimester, and that was one of the best things I ever did for myself. Oh my gosh, that got me through the stress of moving from one coast to the other, and it was just a way that I think I was able to manage pregnancy symptoms so much better. And I'm really happy that that program exists. I'm so proud of it. So that was one of the best things I did for myself while I was pregnant. And I also, while I can't say for certain, I'm quite sure that it's a huge part of why I felt so good throughout my pregnancy. Now, leading up to her birth, I was still feeling great, but I was in no rush to get this baby out. I start to see a lot online of folks when they're like 38 weeks pregnant, they're like ready to get this baby out. That's not how I felt. I was like, take your time, sweet thing. When you're ready, I'm ready. I was in no rush to have this baby because I didn't know what the fuck I was doing when this baby got here. I was so nervous, and I just thought, take your time, because I'm not ready yet. It was the early morning of her due date, around 4 in the morning, and for the first time I felt contractions. I was having Braxton Hicks, but they were not something I could feel. It was more so something I could see. So I would look down and I could see my stomach was morphing and contracting and like squeezing on one side. And if I touched it, it was really firm. So I knew I was having Braxton Hicks, but I was not having a real contraction. The best way I could describe it was like a period cramp. And I remember just kind of being like, maybe it's just something I ate. I don't know. I was a little bit questioning if it could really be. And I waited for maybe an hour before waking up Kyle and saying, I think I'm having contractions. And he starts timing them. He wakes up with me and they start getting really close together to the point where the little silly app where you can keep track of your contractions was like, go to the hospital. But I knew that wasn't quite right. You know, first pregnancy, I just felt like I had more time. And I did. I was laboring that entire day, waiting for these contractions to get stronger. In the middle of the day, they completely went away. I was going on walks and, staying moving, but I almost had no contractions the entire middle of the day. In the evening, they start picking up again, where Kyle and I decide to order some food. We got Chinese food and we watched a movie. And tell me why I chose to watch Something Very Bad Is Going to Happen. I think that's what it's called. If you've watched that movie on Netflix, you can imagine why that was an interesting choice when I'm experiencing early labor. Anyways, we do watch that movie and I'm still kind of in this like very neutral zone. So nothing was really affecting me one way or the other. I just was like, okay, when it's time, it's time. So Kyle keeps saying we should go. And I'm telling him, I want to wait. There's no way I'm walking into that hospital and they're telling me to go home. I am going to make sure that I am dilated enough to be admitted. Okay? Because we have a dog. We needed to sort things out with him. And it was just really complex. So I was waiting until it was really time and my contractions were really close. We finally did hit that mark of your first pregnancy. I don't remember what it is, 555 of how frequent your contractions are and how long they last, 515. Oh my gosh, I don't remember at all. Anyway, we reached that point. I call the OB. That's what we're supposed to do, is call first. They do not call me back. We're waiting. I call again. They do not call back. And I am experiencing contractions to the point where I'm in pain. When we get in the car, Valentino's at daycare. He's at a boarding facility. And Frida has food for a couple days in this little automatic feeder. We're good to go. We've got the hospital bags. We get in that car. And on the way to the hospital, the doctor calls. And he can tell we're in the car and he's like, are you on your way? I'm like, yes. And he goes, good, I'll see you soon. So we walk into the hospital and they admit me right away. People kept asking me if I needed a wheelchair, which I don't know. Like at the entrance, there was security who offered me one and the person at the front desk. And I felt like I was feeling pretty good. So I don't know if they saw something I didn't see, but I was like, no, I'm good. It was kind of a long walk to labor and delivery in hindsight, but maybe I should have taken them up on that. It's okay. So we get in and they do a cervical check. This is the first cervical check I have. I didn't do it at my 38-week appointment. I just wanted to let it happen naturally, I guess, as much as possible and not get in my head. But they do a cervical check. I'm 4 centimeters dilated. I'm admitted. Amazing. I'm naturally laboring for a while. I've got a little stool. I'm doing some moves, and they're like, what are you feeling about the epidural? What are you feeling? And I'm like, I'm thinking, yeah, I want to do one. And the doctor's like, I think that's a great idea. So he gives me the epidural, and the very instant it was injected into my back, I felt something like shoot down to my left foot. It was very weird. And I was like wondering if that was normal. The anesthesiologist assured me that it was, but it was still a little nerve-wracking. He kept saying what a great epidural it was. He's like, you're gonna be thanking me. I got you. This was an amazing epidural. And I'm thinking, okay, like I didn't feel amazing. I actually was feeling incredibly shaky. My entire body soon started trembling like a leaf, to a point where, I mean, it was just unbelievable amount of trembles, shakes, tremors. And then I started to get itchy. Like my entire neck and chest was so itchy. It's like 11 p.m. at this point. Maybe, no, we got there at 11. It was 1 a.m. And they tell us just go to sleep. You're going to have this baby in the morning. And I can't sleep because I'm so itchy. This angel nurse who I never saw again. She came in the night and then I never saw her again. Her shift must have changed. She brought me a little ice pack with a washcloth wrapped around it to use to itch myself because I was that itchy. And that saved me. So I was able to get some sleep. And at this point in the experience, once you are on an intervention like an epidural, there's so many wires and needles and things you're hooked up to. Such a drag. That's my least favorite part, was the wrist IV. Horrible. The catheter, though, I must say, amazing. I really liked the catheter. Especially because toward the end of my pregnancy, I was having such a hard time emptying my bladder. So the catheter was incredible. So we get through that first night, I wake up, and I believe I'm still 4 centimeters dilated. And that was a little discouraging. But my doctor is feeling good. Baby's really feeling great. And he just encourages me to continue like naturally letting labor occur. And at this point, because of the epidural, I believe my nurses, they just didn't want me moving around too much. In hindsight, I wish I had advocated a little bit more for more movement, because I think that would have helped my labor progress a little bit faster. I was just basically moving from one side to the other with a peanut ball in between my knees, and I was experiencing contractions, but I was dilating really slowly. I reached 9 centimeters dilated around 7 p.m. And at this point, Kyle and I are shocked that it's taken all day. Like, we thought we were going to have this baby in the morning, and now it's 7 p.m. I'm 9 centimeters dilated. Okay, we got to be close. I continue to remain at 9 centimeters dilated until 10 p.m., 11 p.m. A new nurse comes, okay? Her name is Kayla. My queen, Kayla. An incredible nurse. And she is familiar with spinning babies, and I can tell that she and I look at each other and we both know we are going to get this baby moving. I'm willing to move. She says, despite your epidural, you're able to move really well. Let's make sure we do as much as we can to get this baby in the right position. So she puts me in flying cowgirl. That position got this baby down, and it was probably the most painful contractions I had experienced, which was a good indicator of things moving forward in the right direction. But I was in a lot of pain at that point, and I had realized I was never pushing my epidural. I was not pushing that button. There's a consistent drip, but I needed a little bit more at that point because the pain was so bad that I was crying. And I don't think I've cried from pain, physical pain, since I was a child. So I'm pushing the button. It becomes Kyle's job to keep pushing the button and increasing the epidural for me. At this point, I am starting to really feel the urge to push. We did add Pitocin, and they did manually break my water earlier in this story. I forgot to add those two things. But I did have this thing, I think it was called an IUGR, an internal monitor that was placed at some point because my doctor was just wondering why I wasn't progressing faster. And that monitor was placed internal, horrible feeling. But he was able to see from that I needed Pitocin. The contractions weren't strong enough. I don't know if it was from, not moving enough during labor, from having the epidural, I'm not sure. First baby, a lot of things. So, anyways, Kayla has me moving around and I'm ready to push. Like, I want to push this baby out and get some relief because pushing is such a relief when you go through as long of a labor as I did. So at this point, it's, maybe about 11 p.m. We're wondering, is this baby coming today or tomorrow? Like, we're making bets. But Kayla wanted that baby to come tonight, and did she make sure that happened for me? What a queen. So if you get a nurse who's familiar with spinning babies, I couldn't encourage it enough. Not every single nurse does those techniques. So labor and delivery, it's good to know. She has me set up in the position to push. She's got Kyle holding one leg, she's holding the other. I'm learning how to push for the first time, and I am feeling discouraged as fuck. Like, I could not feel anything. I felt like I wasn't being productive, and I was expressing that. I was saying, I'm not doing a good job. And she was like, yes, you are. You're doing a great job. And that was really nice. And Kyle was encouraging me too. But she was like, do you want me to grab a mirror? And I was like, yes, I think that will really help me. So I'm looking in the mirror, and all I can think about is, am I about to poop? Like, it was getting in my head so much that I was about to watch myself poop for the first time in my life that I was having a little bit of a hard time focusing. I could see her head moving out a little bit and then coming back, moving out a little bit and coming back. And again, I was feeling discouraged because I didn't know if that was normal, but my nurse seemed really encouraged that things were going well. She took a hot towel and she pushed it against my bum, like my anus. And as soon as she did that, and I didn't have to look at my butt the entire time, I was able to be a lot more effective. So boom, we're in. Now I'm pushing. I kind of feel like something's happening. Her head stops retracting with every push, which was so encouraging. And I was like, wow, I can do this. Moments before, I was thinking, I have tricked everyone in this hospital, including my husband, into thinking I can have a vaginal delivery, and I can't. I was feeling so like there's no way. But lo and behold, that baby is crowning and it's happening. So the doctor finally comes in. He is there just for the glory, like they're only coming at the very end. He has me doing a couple more pushes, and at this point, I've probably been pushing for like an hour. And he is kind of reaching his fingers and like pushing my labia apart. And I hated that feeling so much. I was thinking to myself, Ruth, advocate for yourself and say to stop doing that because it's so uncomfortable. But it took me probably like 15 minutes to say that. And by the time I was like, I really don't like the feeling of your fingers pushing. And he was like, oh, stop pushing. So I was basically done pushing when I finally advocated for myself. And it was time to stop pushing because she was, that's the time where you can get a tear. And I stopped. I remember her head came out and I heard the sound, the most beautiful noise I had ever heard in my entire life. And then the rest of her body came out. They held her up, and I was just thinking, this baby is beautiful. She's perfect. I could not believe how perfect she was. They put her on my belly, and I could feel something like pulling. And I realized it was my umbilical cord, which my doctor had told me was a little bit short. So they couldn't put her very high on my chest. I delivered the placenta, honestly, no big deal. I don't remember it. I didn't feel it, like absolutely no big deal at all. Kyle cut the cord. My doctor I was like, was she sunny side up? How was she? And he was like, she was in the perfect position. Like this long 44 hours in labor, 24 of those in the hospital, was not her fault at all. And I was like, I love that. She was so patient and she stayed like so steady throughout the entire labor. She never decelerated. She never was stressed. So what a little baby already, right? And at some point when I first started pushing, I did have meconium, which means my baby took her first poop while still in the birth canal, which is a bit of a risk. So they have her on my stomach for only a short time, and NICU is in the room at this point. I'm a little bit nervous, of course, and they take her and they start checking her, and I am just staring at her on the warmer. They tell Kyle that, does he want to come meet her? And I was so envious. I wanted to be able to look at her closer, but I knew they had to take care of her and make sure she was cleared. Thankfully, she was. Like, that was super scary, but she was all good. She needed to have some suction. Like, they used the ball syringe and cleared her airways, made sure there was no meconium. She was good to go. They put her back on my chest. I was in heaven. It was the best feeling. It just was the best feeling. I had sunglasses on this whole time, by the way, because the hospital lights were really bright, especially when NICU and the doctor came in. It was like I'm on stage and I needed my shades. So I have my sunglasses on and I'm thinking like, maybe I should take them off so she can actually see me. So I take them off and everyone's commenting how much hair she has. She has a great head of hair, so much. It's so long. And they're doing all of her little procedures and she's just amazing. It was the greatest feeling ever. I can't even put into words how right it felt to have her on the outside, how beautiful it was to hold her, and just how in awe of her I was. And also how much closer it brought me and my husband. That was probably one of the most surprising parts about giving birth. I was ready to fully hate my husband only because that's what I had seen online, but I didn't feel that way at all. And we figured it out together. I was really nervous about breastfeeding, and the first time I tried, the particular lactation consultant I had, I don't think she was bad at her job by any means, but I think she was a little harsher than I needed someone to be at that point. I was a little bit too delicate to have someone kind of being a little bit harsh with me. She was kind of just drilling me with a lot of questions, and it was a little hard. So when she left the room, I started bawling. I was crying so much. I was breaking down. How am I going to feed my baby? And some other nurses were able to really help me and guide me through it, and that was really encouraging. I personally have a lot of sensitivity, or not even sensitivity, but just I get squeamish around touching my own nipples. I was really worried that was going to make breastfeeding just not possible for me, and my goal was to exclusively breastfeed. I didn't want to pump, and I didn't want to use formula if I didn't have to, even though if you pump or use formula, you're amazing. Those things are really challenging too. So thankfully, she was so good at getting on that boob and doing what she needed to do. So I was able to just exclusively breastfeed her. She was able to lose the right amount of weight, where when we left the hospital, they're like, you're good to go, just keep breastfeeding, which was amazing. So that's the birth story of how Daisy came to be. And it was just the very best day of my entire life. I wanted to chat about postpartum exercise. The very first ever issued guidelines of postpartum exercise were in 2003, and they were not well supported with valuable studies or high certainty studies. So they didn't actually give us a solid guideline we're still missing a ton of data on the postpartum period, but we had a little bit more in 2025, which is kind of wild to think it took that long to get some exercise guidelines for postpartum. Wow. And I want to give you kind of my spark notes in case you don't want to read the study, but if you do want to sit down and read the study, you can find it. It's the Canadian Guidelines on Postpartum, and sedentary behavior and sleep, I believe, might be the full title. But if you just search Canadian Guidelines Postpartum, they will come up for you. I think what I found to be the most interesting is that the recommendation to spend 5 days in bed, 5 days on the bed, days around the bed is not supported by the latest data on what's the best, especially for your mental health. I don't think that the wisdom of that 5 day rule is lost on me. I believe that rule made a lot more sense when postpartum mothers had a community around them and support. Right now, that's just not the reality for a lot of us. So the studies and the evidence actually points to sedentary behavior leading to higher incidence of postpartum depression and postpartum anxiety. It's also worth mentioning that social support and sleep play a huge role in feeling better postpartum. So postpartum depression, postpartum anxiety, and how quickly you're feeling able to get back into gentle movement is highly, highly dependent on those two factors. And those are so independent and unique for every single person. And what a privilege it is to be able to feel good after pregnancy. It's interesting. I think a lot of it comes down to your support, and if you're able to have time off of work, and that's just, and whether you're breastfeeding or not, those things impacting your sleep. There's so much at play here that I just want to acknowledge. So if you're a postpartum mom here and you're beating yourself up for not getting back into movement as early as these guidelines suggest, you're doing amazing. And I just want to encourage you to know that it's completely okay. If you're newly postpartum, you're feeling like you have social support, you're getting some sleep, then the guideline is to start with light movement as soon as possible. Light walking, daily activities around your home, just normal activities that you would do on a day-to-day basis are encouraged. I also want to mention a few contraindications that would make you want to get a doctor's clearance before you begin approaching moderate to vigorous exercise. And those are severe abdominal pain, vaginal bleeding not associated with the lochia or your own period, and if your bleeding is more intense after moderate to vigorous exercise, and that's like brisk walking, then it's time to slow down. That's a good indicator. And those things are obviously impacted by what degree tear you have. I had a 1st-degree tear, which is most superficial of just the skin, doesn't involve the muscle. But if you have a more severe tear, those things can take longer to heal, and those are contraindications for getting back into movement right away. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't do any movement at all, and still the normal daily activities is still recommended from a standpoint of your mental health. Some other things that you're going to likely see improvement in if you follow doing some light exercise, and the recommendation is 120 minutes of movement per week spread over 4 days, is not just the mental benefits, we've been over that, but your pelvic floor health is going to have massive benefit as well, especially for urinary incontinence. You have a reduction in lower back pain and pelvic girdle pain, and just an overall reduction in the severity of those symptoms. There's a reduction in fatigue when you follow this, and there's also cardiometabolic health elements associated with this, and that has to do with your BMI and your weight, and I don't like to get into that too much, but it's worth mentioning. There's also a large section in this guideline recommending doing gentle pelvic floor muscle training. So if you're familiar with a pelvic floor physical therapist, amazing. If not, it's really easy to do these basic exercises. I'm going to create a video on RPS very soon with some of those basic exercises you can start doing, and you start doing them on your back. It's super low. It's very accessible. And a lot of it has to do with breathing, coordinating your breath, and just kind of being in your body and getting your mind into your body. Now, I had a question from someone on how do you fit movement into your daily life when you're a mom and the demands are just immense, right? You may only have 5 minutes here and there to get something done. And another thing that this guideline really stresses is how beneficial it is just doing a little bit. So I just want you to feel encouraged that even just a little bit of movement is extraordinarily beneficial. I like to do some movement when my baby is asleep, and whether that's in her crib or while baby wearing her. I love to walk while baby wearing her. I really encourage that. If it's something that feels good to you to do, you can put your baby in the stroller and walk. If you have access to that, amazing. If you don't, I really think having a walking pad is a great asset if you don't have safe places to walk. And if you are really careful, you can wear your baby on a walking pad. That's really up to you if you feel safe enough doing it. I have a standing desk above a walking pad where I can do work, so my hands are actually helping provide some balance for me while walking with her. And I find it to be just a really easy way to get some movement in while, having a baby. Another question that came up on Instagram was postpartum hair care. And can I just tell you, my hair, I don't know if I have any tips for this. My hair texture changed when I got pregnant. It was probably the first symptom I would have noticed because my hair started growing out from the root with a bend in it, and it has never done that before. Now I know that's like the first sign of pregnancy. So hair texture changes, it's all normal. I will say this, I was convinced that I would not be able to keep up with my self-care routines while having a baby, and that's just not true. I've been able to, thankfully. What I do is I'll just lay her in a safe place on the floor of the bathroom, and I will get what I need to done, or I will hand her off to Kyle. And I've been pleasantly surprised at how I'm able to still keep up with my hair care routine. I do use K18 once in a while to help, and I also condition my hair to detangle it before I shampoo. I shampoo twice and then I do conditioner again, and that helps. That helps me. Maybe it will help you too. I also did start a Shop My account. It's like an affiliate link page, and I have all my hair care favorites there if you want to check it out. If you want to use those links, they do support me. You don't have to, but just throwing that out there too. I want to go through my motherhood hot takes, let's call them. This is the very last thing I'm going to talk about on this podcast, but the first thing I want to say is that if you're not careful consuming content online, much of the moms and what you're going to see is actually privilege and wealth. And those things can completely change your postpartum experience so much. So I just think it's helpful to follow moms and see content that isn't so draped in like privilege and wealth. What do I mean by this? I mean, there's tons of these. You probably are familiar with all the baby carriers you can get. There's like a $400, $500 baby carrier that so many people have. And listen, I know it's amazing, but you don't need it. If you can get a wrap like this, I actually prefer it so, so much. Rocking chairs. I bawled out of my rocking chair, and it was amazing when I was pregnant, especially in the 3rd trimester. And it's still useful, don't get me wrong, but an exercise ball is way more accessible and works better for soothing my baby. So wrapping my baby up, bouncing on the exercise ball, that is all I need. I definitely did not need that rocking chair, and I just want to encourage you to know there's so many things you don't need. One of my hot takes though is a lot of people will tell you don't get too many newborn size things, and that is true, and you can always get more, but I just want to say my baby is coming up to 7 weeks and she's still in newborn clothes, and she can still fit into newborn diapers. So she's a normal healthy weight. She's almost 9 pounds, but babies wear their weight differently. And yeah, I just want to say that, like, we have so many size 1 diapers that we haven't even been able to use. So just take that into account. And just, yeah, make sure you're not comparing yourself to moms on social media who have unlimited funds and help with their babies. Like, it can look so different for you, and that's so okay. It's okay not to have every single doohickey and thing, and I actually really prefer a minimalistic approach to motherhood. If that resonates with you, I just want you to know it's okay. You can be minimal, and you can have a great experience. My other motherhood hot take. This has to do with approaching birth and motherhood with a neutral mindset was a life hack for me. So what do I mean by that? I went into pregnancy thinking it was going to be a lot harder and worse than it was. And I think that just set me up for feeling pleasantly surprised when it wasn't as hard or as painful or difficult as I thought it was going to be. And it also encouraged me to take a lot of action as far as staying moving, because I knew that would help me. And that set me up for a pretty smooth and easy pregnancy. I also went into birth with no illusions that, there's a possibility that me or my baby do not walk out of that hospital. And, that it was a reality that was in my mind. For me, that was helpful because it just gave me a lot of perspective. I don't think it's something that you need to dwell on or fear so intensely. And I want to be really careful with how I say this, but I just think having a neutral or even a low expectation of motherhood and birth can really set you up for a smooth experience where you're not feeling disappointment and where you don't have this giant crash. You're already going to have a crash because of the hormones, but because I wasn't even expecting to feel immediately bonded to my baby when they handed me to her to me, because that is completely normal too. I think that sets us up for a more realistic experience of motherhood. And I will also say, like, I thought the newborn stage was going to be way, way harder than it was. And thank goodness it's been smooth for us. Of course, it's challenging. I just think I'm aware of how much harder it could be. And that makes a big difference for me and my mental health. So I don't know if that one makes sense, but that's another hot take I have. You do not have to pump. I wanted to breastfeed my baby and I did not want to pump. I don't know why. I think learning another thing and having more stuff to clean and sanitize, and it's just not something I wanted to do. And thankfully, it's not something I have to do. So I want you to know that too. If you're someone who wants to breastfeed, it is possible. You can do it without pumping. I've heard this saying a lot, that the days are long but the years are short. The days are short, bitch. Like, my days fly by. I cannot believe how quickly the day is gone. And yeah, that just wasn't my experience. I also want to just mention I had a really real experience of sundown scaries. I had a very real experience of postpartum anxiety symptoms. I just want to address that too. It has not been all sunshine and rainbows, but it's just been so much more beautiful and natural than I imagined it could be. So I just want to add that. I believe that baby wipes, everyone should have baby wipes, whether you have a baby or not. How handy are these? Like, we had ribs the other night and I was like, grab the baby wipes. When I sit down to do my makeup, I have the baby wipes next to me so I can quickly clean up anything. I mean, baby wipes are great. Just want to say that. I also want to mention just how amazing it is to baby wear. I think if I had known how much I would love wearing my baby and especially wrapping my baby, and if you're someone who enjoys folding, you enjoy like origami type of play and experience, you might really enjoy wrapping your baby. And if you're someone who prefers the backpack style carriers, then I think they're called soft structured carriers. Those are great too. I really love wrapping, and I just feel like it has helped my mental health so much. Having her close to me is really soothing for her. She's a lot less fussy when she's on me, and I feel calm when she's on me, and I can get so much done. I can breastfeed her while she's in here. I can do computer work. I can walk. I can do work around the house. So I just think baby wearing is amazing. If I had known, I probably wouldn't have gotten the bassinet attachment for my stroller. It was $150, and every day I'm like, I shouldn't have gotten that. So anyways, I just want to throw that out there. The baby wearing is so much fun, and you might not want to invest in a bassinet if you were thinking about that attachment for your stroller. It was handy. I've used it a handful of times, and I probably will use it in the future, but if I had it my way, I would be wearing her all the time. I'd be wearing her to sleep. I'd be wearing her all the time. I just love it. I also want to talk about sharing my baby's face on social media and kind of where I'm at with that, because I wasn't quite sure if I wanted to. And circling back to kind of the negative comments that I've received in the past and some of the harassment, it just was something that I wasn't sure if I wanted to do. And ultimately I decided not to share her face, like, up close and personal on my social media. I did decide to share her face in my community, my RPS community inside our app, which is a private space, and that felt really good and safe to share her there. And I'm sharing her a little bit here, which I feel safe and good about. But that's kind of my thoughts on it. I think it's really up to the mother. There's no right or wrong. What feels best to you is what's best to you. Lastly, I shared the other day when I went to my postpartum checkup that I was leaving my baby with my husband, and it's his baby too. And I was saying that she gave him a really hard time the last time I left them to their own devices, and maybe she would do the same this time. But I'm raising her to decenter men, so she can give him hell if she wants to. And I had someone ask me more about my thoughts on decentering men, so I wanted to just share that really quickly, because it's an ethos that I really want to make sure I raise my daughter with, and it's not the way that I was raised. In fact, I feel like I was almost raised the opposite. So, and I think it had a detrimental effect on me. And I just want to make sure that my little girl knows that seeking the validation of men and, even consuming the content of men, taking the words and advice of men, and supporting the businesses of men, supporting the art of men, all those things do not have to be at the center of her world. And her own desires and what she wants to do is ultimately what is most important. And I also want to really encourage her to consume the content, the art, the work of women, and to really understand the value of women and her female relationships. I cannot state enough just how important I think that is, just how beneficial for me it has been changing. I think when I was a teenager and coming from a background that was pretty neglectful, any attention seemed like good attention. And because I was raised by a woman who did center men, I saw attention from men as, probably the highest currency. And what a bad experience, how many bad experiences that led me down. And I just hope that I can help my daughter decenter men and just really embrace the power, the beauty, the creativity of the women in this world, and of her own desires, her own motivations. And I just also want to mention really quickly, this has nothing to do with hating men. It just has to do with not having them be at the center of everything and being the main motivator of all things as a woman. It's and it's hard to it sounds simple, but because there's so many things in our society that are subtly letting us know that actually men have the greatest authority and men are at the center and men are to be more trusted, you have to actively work against that. So I'll be raising my daughter to decenter men, and if I have more advice on that in the future, she gets older, I'd be more than happy to share. And all right, y'all, that's it for today. I do want to mention really quickly that if you want to join my membership community, you can have a 7-day free trial. I have a brand new app that launched last year, and it's incredible. The whole format of my website and the app now is so much better. It's much improved. I would love for you to give it a try. I would love for you to jump into the community and experience it. I'm going to be starting a new program soon, and I have the Muscle Mommy program there if you're currently pregnant or if you just want to work on weight training. It's great for everyone. So I just wanted to mention that. A little plug. I really appreciate y'all. Thank you so much for being here, and I cannot wait to talk to you in the next.